In 2024, we're going to elect a new president in the United States. Which president, the Republican president or a Democratic president, would be better for the stock market? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm not going to talk about which president is, I think, better or worse or better for this type of situation or another. I'm just going to strictly look at the stock market and which president would probably help the stock market, and also point out how the stock market can be influenced by a president. And today is July 17th, and there's big influence in the market today. The Republican nominee, presumptive nominee, really had strong words around the semiconductor industry, that he would have trade tariffs and limitations on the chips that could be sold abroad, as he sees that there is a threat from China in the chip market. And that really affected semiconductor companies. They're down quite a bit today. So that's an example of one president making news and affecting a particular industry within the technology sector. So the noise that we're going to hear in 2024 around this election stands to move the market up or down, and stands to really set the table for the next couple of years within each sector of stocks. It's going to be a noisy year where we get a lot of information. Some of it is going to be pretty intense and dramatic and emotional, I imagine. In this video, I just want to focus on stocks. I want to see how certain policies are going to affect sectors of stocks, types of stocks, and really it's an information input to see where are the investments going to be best over the next couple of years, depending on whether in the US a Republican or Democratic president gets elected. Let me jump into each sector and share with you how I see either a Republican or a Democratic president affecting that particular sector, and then pointing to which one would probably be better for that sector. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with the technology sector, since the technology sector has been the number one performing sector for 2 years. And this includes semiconductor companies like NVIDIA, Microsoft, which is a software company. It's a very successful sector. And this sector could really be moved if there's certain policies implemented. And a perfect example is that today, July 17th, the Republican nominee had strong words around the limitation and barriers they're going to put on international chip sales. So that could really affect NVIDIA and all these American companies that could or could not sell to foreign companies that are in other countries. So that could definitely affect the technology sector. Now, overall, I think that a Republican president tends to bring down regulation, and that's really good for technology. Republicans also don't stand in the way of mergers and acquisitions. And for the last 3 years, there haven't been a lot of acquisitions. At least I haven't noticed any big ones and a volume of acquisitions taking place. I think there would be more acquisitions if there was a Republican president, which would boost up values of these small and mid-cap stocks. So overall, I would say that a Republican president would probably benefit the technology sector more than a Democratic president. The last point I'll make on technology is it seems that Democrats really go after technology companies, and they really want to break them up. They're very quick to think that, hey, these big companies are too big. We got to break them up. And that's also a headwind for the sector. So I'll give the nod to the Republican side as being better for the technology sector. Communication services is the next sector. This sector has companies like Netflix, Google, Meta, Comcast, Disney. And these companies are producing content or providing services online. Very successful sector. And this one here is kind of a tough one. I don't know which side would be better or worse. I think it's pretty close to a tie. I would just point out that Democrats tend to really try to break things up again, but the Republican side, they also go after, like, I think there was a big battle between the Republican governor of Florida against Disney. Now, I'm not sure why, but I think there's a real rift between that governor and Disney because of the content that Disney produces. Now, I have no opinion on whether who's right or wrong. I'm just pointing out it seems like the Republicans go after media companies from time to time. So I'm going to call it a tie with just a slight edge to the Democratic side on communication sectors. So right now the score is 1-1. Financial services. This one's pretty easy for me. I think the Republicans would probably help this sector far more. These are big banks. These are financial services companies. Republicans tend to reduce regulation. They want to reduce interest rates. They want to make it easier to do business. That's just a big tailwind. The Democrats tend to be more, hey, let's regulate everything, let's control profits, let's really make a lot of paperwork out of every transaction. And that would be a burden on financial services as a sector. So I'm going to give that one to the Republican side. So it's 2-1 favoring the Republicans. Industrials. Industrial stocks are like 3M. These are like travel, airlines, those types of companies. And I think that one's a tie. I can't say which side would probably help that sector. I think both sides want the economy to be good. They want jobs to be created. They want people to be employed. That would be good for industrials. So that's a tie. So we're still at 2-1 favoring the Republicans. The next sector is healthcare. And this one's easy for me because I think the Republicans would really help the healthcare sector. Republicans tend to reduce regulation, make it easier for pharmaceutical companies to operate, and so forth. Democrats on the other side are always trying to protect, I think, the poor and the kind of the average citizen, so to speak, by really imposing a lot of restrictions on pharmaceutical companies and really going after the healthcare companies. Now, again, I'm not making any political opinion here. I'm just pointing out, I think pharmaceutical, biotech, healthcare companies are going to be more profitable under a Republican leadership and Republican policy. So I'm going to give the nod to the Republican side for healthcare. The score is 3 sectors to the Republican side, 1 to the Democratic side, and 1 tie. Now, energy is the next sector, and that one's easy. The Republicans are always about exploring for more energy, making energy costs less expensive by deregulating and making it very easy. The Democrats, I think they have good reasons to want to, limit the pollution from energy, limit the exploration because it tends to ruin some natural resources. And all those things, I understand the reasons for it. But from a business perspective, a stock market perspective, the Republican side would really favor energy. So it's 4-1 and 1 tie, and the Republicans are clearly leading the separation here, or the contest that I've imposed. Next is consumer discretionary. This one is pretty much a tie. I can't tell you that one side or the other is going to create more sales of Nike shoes or cosmetics or those types of things. I think that one's a tie. It's going to go in the tie bucket. So it's 4 to the Republicans, 1 to the Democrats, and 2 in the tie column. Next one is basic materials. Again, this one's pretty close. But basic materials, I think, would probably be favored by the Republican side because they tend to open up more lands for exploration. They tend to reduce the restrictions on these companies. So I'm going to call it a tie, but just say that it'd probably be a little easier if you had the Republicans in office. So that one's going to go in the tie bucket. So we got 4 to the Republicans, 1 to the Democrats, and 3 in the tie column. Utilities, it's another one that's going to be a tie. I don't think one or the other is one side or the other being elected is going to help this sector a whole lot. So we'll put that one in the tie column. So there's 4 ties at this point. Consumer staples, I'm going to give it to the Democrats. And the reason for it is consumer staples tend to be the foods that we eat. And the Democrats tend to have more programs for the poor and for people to buy food that they need. And that type of additional consumption led by the government would help these companies. So I'm going to give that one to the Democrats. So we got 4 sectors where a Republican president would favor those sectors, 2 sectors, Democrats would favor those sectors, and then 4 where the sectors would be tied. The last one is real estate. And real estate is a tough one to pick one or the other. I'm going to call that one a tie because I think under both types of presidents, real estate's done really well. And I don't see that one president's going to affect that market a whole lot. So that one's going to go in the tie column. So the final score is 4 sectors stand to win or gain from a Republican president more than a Democratic president. 2 sectors stand to gain more from a Democratic president versus a Republican president. Then 5 sectors are a tie. In conclusion, I think that the president is a really important role. I think they set the agenda for the country. They do have an effect on the stock market, especially within certain sectors. But in general, the U.S. has had a really good stock market for some time under both Democratic and Republican presidents. But I would have to say that a Republican president would probably create more profits, greater cash flows, and that's what drives my valuations for companies. They would also reduce regulation and make it easier to do business. You'd probably see more acquisitions happen as well. So that's what I see. Again, I'm not voicing any political opinion at all. That's just how I see it. And as we go through the rest of 2024. We'll see how a lot of these political statements are really moving the market, because the markets will move based on policy that's being, communicated, and policy that would affect these sectors. So I hope you found the video interesting, and I'd love to hear your comments on what sectors you think are going to move, whether a Republican or a Democratic president gets elected. And as always, I really appreciate you watching. Please keep in mind of my sponsors. I'm being sponsored by Moomoo. They have a nice offer for new account holders. They'll pay you 8.1% on deposits. They'll also give you 15 free stocks if you deposit more than $1,000. And I have a new sponsorship that I'll announce, and that's with Seeking Alpha. And they have been generous enough to start sponsoring me. I appreciate that. And I'm going to provide links to both Moomoo and Seeking Alpha. Seeking Alpha has a great platform for information, and I'll be using that for my videos going forward. And I'll be sharing with you what I get out of Seeking Alpha. If you are interested in subscribing to Seeking Alpha, please use the link that I'm putting in the video description to get signed up. With that, I appreciate you watching, and good luck in investing in 2024.